Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Sri Tips here, and the day has finally come where I need to get some of this gold to pay some of my debts. Let's get a weight on this thing. We got 585 grams, and now what we're going to do is pour this material out into this little sort tray that I have here. These are all little catches and little pieces, odd and ends that I've saved over the years. As I go through the scrap and process it and get it ready for refining, such as this has got all the steel springs and all non-gold material removed from it. But what I do is I save all the catches and all the little pieces and parts and put them in this bottle and save it for a rainy day. And today is a rainy day. Let's see what we got on the empty bottle here. That's 36 grams, say, so 585 minus 36, that's roughly what? 550 grams of material that I have here. And I want to save, I guess, most of the bigger pieces. But these little ones, they can go in here, and I can process them. I don't need a whole bunch of these little bitty catches like these little circles. I've sorted through this material, and now what we're going to do is we're going to keep all these pieces. And this is the nice big pieces, charms and other things that are more valuable in the form that they're in. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep these. These rings right here, these are off chains and things that I've refined in the past. So we're going to refine this. I've selected a whole bunch of catches. I just had too many, and so I've selected a whole bunch in here. And what we'll do is we'll refine these and these. These are all pieces that had diamonds in them, and so I'll save these. They have a little bit of extra value because they have diamonds, so I'll save these. This is the 14K scrap that I've accumulated. This is the 10K scrap that I've accumulated. Each of these gold catches has a steel spring in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a few to this melt dish here before we go all in. I'm going to take this out and melt it up and see if we can get the gold melted and the springs separated from the gold. Here you can see a few of the steel springs still clinging to the button of gold. My goal here was to try to heat the gold up, melt it, and then have it reject the steel springs, and it kind of did that. Most of the springs are in the melt dish out there. And it's either this, or I sit here and one by one cut these open and pull all the springs out of each one of these pieces individually. That would take a couple hours. I've never done these before. I have had batches where some steel springs got into them and it wasn't a problem, but I'm going to make a command decision here, and what we'll do is put all these springs in one melt dish and then go out there and try to melt it up like we just did. Flux it real good with some borax. Someone asked in a comment about borax and what it does for us in these melt dishes, and so we should be able to demonstrate that as well in this video. So now I've got all the catches in a single melt dish. And what we'll do is we'll take these out now and do what we just did with that sample batch and try to melt it up. We don't want to use the acetylene torch. That will melt the steel springs. We're just going to use the MAP gas torch, and those steel springs will stay solid, and then flux it real good with some borax, and hopefully we'll get the gold separated from the springs. This worked out fairly well. Here is our recovered gold with most of the springs separated. There's probably going to still be a few in there, but we'll call this 12K gold because it was a mixture of 14 and 10K, so we're just going to call this 12K. All right, looks like we've got 111 grams of 112 grams of 12K gold here. I'm going to add this these pieces that we just recovered to this little bin here. It's 112.1. I've got 10K and 14K for this batch. This material here, these are the bigger catches, and the nicer pieces that have more value other than just their gold content. So I'm going to keep all this. I'm going to put it back in the jar and keep all this as my savings account. I'm going to use this larger melt dish here because we got a big charge of metal this time. Zero the scale. We're going to add the 14K scraps of karat gold to this melt dish. And now we'll record the weight, 89.4, 14K, 89.4. Zero the scale. Now we're going to add the 10K scraps that we have here. And that's going to be 55.6. 10K, 55.6. We're going to add the 12K material that we just recovered. Zero the scale. Looks like we've got 112.1 of 12K. 112.1. I'm going to take this out, put it on the melt table, and we'll start melting the gold right now. Let's go. This is the melt dish that's got all our steel springs in it. We'll set that off to the side. And now what we'll do is we'll start melting the gold here and get it ready to enquart with silver. Here are my calculations for the 14K is 89.4 multiplied by a constant of 1.265. I need 113 grams of sterling silver to properly enquart that amount of 14K. 10K, I've got 55.6. Multiply that by a constant of 0.635. Tells me I need 35.3 grams of sterling. For the 12K, there's 112.1. I just divide that by 2 because it's going to be 50% gold. That's 56. Multiply that by 3 so I get an alloy that's 3 parts silver, 1 part gold. I need 168 grams of sterling. Add that all up. I need 316 grams of sterling silver to properly enquart this gold. And if you look over here, I've pre-weighed the sterling that I'm going to enquart the gold with. These are all sterling silver pieces, flatware. And I've got 320.4 grams. know there are people asking, why did I add silver to the gold? And the answer is, it reduces the gold concentration down to around 25%. And then the nitric acid boils can penetrate to the core of each of these pieces of encorded gold. If we don't encort the gold with silver or copper, then it wouldn't do nothing when I added the nitric acid to it. It would just sit there unaffected, because nitric acid cannot penetrate into the high carat gold, 10K and above. It just sit there. So we got to reduce the amount of gold in there, and then the nitric acid boils that we're doing right now will be able to penetrate to the core of each piece. Remove all the silver and base metals that was already in the carat gold, plus any silver that we just added. These nitric boils will get that out as well. Put it up on the heat. This was nitric boil number 1. And what I'm going to do now is pour off the liquid into this jar. It's full of silver. The silver in this jar will consume any of the excess nitric that comes over. When I pour this liquid off, this liquid will be full of silver and base metals. I'm just going to pour it off and add it to my silver jar here. And then what we'll do is I'm going to add some more distilled water to the jar, or to the encorded gold. Put it back up on the heat. I'm adding some more nitric acid, and we'll do nitric acid boil number 2 on this encorded gold. I had the beaker turned the other way. When I mark this, this will be nitric acid boil number 2. Before I pour off this third nitric boil into my silver jar, I want to show you what I do with this liquid. Over here is another silver jar. It's full of silver pieces, and what I've done is poured it through this filter, and I've got a filtered silver nitrate solution down here. And then when I get enough of this, I store it in one of these old nitric acid bottles. And when I'm ready to process it, what I do is I put it in a big beaker like this one right here. And there's copper in here. This is all cement silver that's been cemented out on this piece of copper. Let me see if I can get it up. There it is. It's a piece of copper in there. And the silver comes out of the solution on that piece of copper. And then I take this and rinse it off real good until all the blue copper nitrate's rinsed off of it, and recover the silver from these silver jars. Let's get this third nitric boil out of here now. Just going to pour this right into this silver jar. See the gold's turning a nice brown color now. Add a little bit more distilled water. Now we're going to add some more nitric acid and do our fourth nitric acid boil. Number 4. Reaction is producing 0 fumes now. The gold looks nice and brown, and that's an indication we're getting close to being done with our nitric acid boils. There's a look at the gold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it down now into my second silver jar. You're going to see a fairly decent reaction because this is a hot nitric acid hitting the silver. It's going to immediately produce nitrogen dioxide. I rinse this out real good. Try to get as much of the blue liquid off there as we can. This should be very close to the last nitric boil. Oh, this is looking real good. Here's our gold. It's looking spectacular. Gonna rinse a little bit more with some distilled water. If you look at that solution, it's clear now, colorless. I'm gonna add some water. We're gonna go back up on the heat. We can tell by the clarity and colorless liquid that's sitting on that gold that we're fairly close to being complete with these nitric acid boils. This sixth and final nitric boil is complete. Tell by the color and clarity of the solution here. All of the silver and all the base metals have been completely removed from this now. Gonna rinse this out and add the rinses to our silver jar. Now we're gonna add distilled water to our beaker and boil the gold in distilled water. It's been on boiling now for about half an hour or so, I guess. Pour the boiling water off of our gold. But a quick rinse. And this is what our gold looks like now that we've got it all cleaned up. All the silver and base metals have been removed. And this is ready for refining with aqua regia. I'm going to measure out about 40 milliliters of nitric acid. I've got 4 troy ounces of gold here, so that's a little over, but that'll work. Now I'll add some hydrochloric acid, about half a liter. I'm going to add in that's more close to 50 milliliters of nitric acid. Pour it right in. I'm going to cover this up now. We're going to set it up on the heat and let it dissolve. Here you can see we've got a little bit of gold left in solution. Before we go any further, what I want to do here is add some sulfuric acid to precipitate out any lead that might be present. I'm going to have to add some more nitric acid to get the rest of this gold to precipitate, or to dissolve rather. Let's get a shot underneath the beaker so we can see how much we've got left in there that needs to go into solution. Not much. There's not a whole lot of gold that needs to go into solution here. But this solution's really hot, so I'm going to have to add this very slowly. Drop by drop. You'll see it's going to react rather vigorously. Everything's gone into solution now. It took about another 8 milliliters of nitric acid, some extra heat, and a little patience. And we've got everything dissolved now. Pull it down, let it cool off. Our solution has been allowed to cool for about 15 or 20 minutes. Now we're going to add some ice to cool it further, dilute the solution, and precipitate out any silver chloride that may be present. Here's a look down at the bottom of the beaker. A few stones, maybe some diamonds that was in that alloy of metal that we dissolved. Here is our solution. And what we're going to do, looks a little bit cloudy, so I'm going to put this back through the same filter a second time. Don't look too bad for the first pass through the filter. Now let's see if we can get it to clear up a little bit with a second pass through the same filter. What happens is the filter gets clogged up with particulate, the pores get smaller, and then it's able to filter out even smaller particles that remain in our solution. That second pass through the filter cleaned the solution up nicely. Here's what we got left in the filter. Now what we'll do is transfer our solution to a big beaker and get ready to precipitate. Here we go with the precipitation. I always add ice if I have 2 or more ounces. You see how the solution cleared up nicely with that second pass through the filter. I'm adding stump out, which is sodium metabisulfite, and we're going to use this now to precipitate out our pure gold. Here we go. This is about 4 troy ounces, so it's going to take quite a bit of SMB to get everything to precipitate. I'm looking for a head of white foam on top of our liquid. That will tell me that everything has come out of solution. It's getting there. I can tell by the color change in there now. It's getting there. There we go. There's our white foam. See, a head of white foam, that means all the gold has precipitated. We're done. We're going to take this now and put it up on the heat and give it a boil. Give this a quick stir. You can tell already that gold is looking spectacular. I'm going to pour the waste solution off now into my waste container over here. There's gold down here. I added too much aqua regia and precipitated out a whole bunch of gold in my waste container. So this might cause that gold to precipitate by adding this waste solution in there. There it goes. Look at that. Rinse with a little water. And I can tell this is high purity already with just this single refining. Rinsing it a couple more times with some distilled water. Make sure and get all the excess SMB off there. Here's our pure gold. Give it a quick rinse with some hydrochloric acid and add that right on into the waste container. I'm adding about a half a liter of hydrochloric acid. Now I'm pouring in about 50 milliliters of nitric. I'm going to cover it up, set it up here on the heat, and let it dissolve a second time. Here we go. For the person who asked about borax and why and how we use it in our refining processes, here I'm glazing a brand new melt dish with tiny pinches of borax. I heat it up to redness and then put small pinches of borax on there, and it coats the inside of the melt dish. And what this will do, this is important, it has to be done, this will prevent the gold from sticking to the inside of the melt dish. Here's what a properly glazed melt dish should look like. I'm going to add a little bit of sulfuric acid to precipitate out any lead that may have made it this far into the process. I think we still got gold down in the bottom of our beaker. Yeah, a lot of it. So I'm going to have to add some more nitric acid. Try to get the rest of this gold to dissolve. Solution's hot, so I got to be careful adding this. Just like before. That took about a half hour. Everything has gone into solution. The solution looks crystal clear and beautiful. Just going to pull it down now and let it cool off a little bit. I've added some ice to cool our solution down. And by the way, the ice cubes were made from distilled water. So now we're going to pour it through this filter. You can see how crystal clear our solution is. At this point, filtering is just a formality. Let's get set up for precipitation. Here's our funnel and our filter. It looks clean as a whistle. Now what we'll do is pour our solution into this clean beaker. It's got some ice in it. Here we go with the second precipitation. I'm adding sodium metabisulfite again. If I had a bunch of junk in here, I'd probably use a different precipitant for the second refining. But this stuff was fairly clean, and so I'm confident that 2 refinings with SMB is going to be just fine here. Stir this up. Oh yeah, we got a nice coating of gold down there on the bottom. Get a little on a piece of filter paper. Do a stannous test. Make sure we've got everything out of solution. I'm gonna add another spoon just for good measure here. There's our white foam. So we know we've got everything precipitated. Now we'll set this up on the heat and get it to settle out, and then go from there. Here's our twice refined pure gold. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get it out of that waste solution and recover the pure gold powder. Just going to pour this off into here. All right, I'm running out of room in my waste container. This was a fairly large amount of gold, about 4 tray ounces in here. I'm going to rinse this over and over with some water and then with some hydrochloric acid. And then we're going to get it into a drying dish and dry it off. This is the hydrochloric acid boil. Gonna pour this off now. Came out looking real good. Just pour the hydrochloric acid off into my waste container. Let's get our gold in this casserole and see if we can get it dried off. Here it is. This one is a beauty. High purity. I could tell that this one was going to come out very nice. No traces of contamination. Let's see what we got here. I was expecting 131. I got 133.8, a little bit more than I was expecting, which is okay. 4.3 troy ounces. Very nice. Look at that thing, man. I just can't take my eyes off it. It's absolutely beautiful. Let's weigh this bottle here. I had 585 when we started. I got 403, so we took roughly about 180 grams of material out of my savings account to contribute to this bar. This bar has to be sold. I owe a debt, and so I wish I could keep it, but I owe a debt, and that thing has to be paid off. All right, this will conclude the video. Thank you for watching.